Hello students, Mr. Yun here with Chapter 12, Lesson 3. This lesson is called Jackson and the Bank. So true story, friends. Andrew Jackson hated the bank. It represented everything he hated, which was pompous, well-educated, silver spoon-fed rich guys. Jackson was a self-made man, a war hero, forged in battle, raised in the wilderness of the West. So when the opportunity came to give the bank the big old oh, you better believe he did. What was the results? We shall see on the very next page. Okay, the bank and the election of 1832. So Jackson's opponents, of which there were many, tried to use the bank against him in the election of 1832. How did they do that? Well, there was this new political party forming called the Whigs. Party was mainly national Republicans and other folks that didn't like Jackson. These folks believed that the American people liked the national bank and thought if they would be able to get Jackson to close the bank, it would wreck him in the presidential election of 1832. So these Whigs, guys like Henry Clay from the West and Daniel Webster from Massachusetts, convinced the head of the bank, Nicholas Biddle, to reapply for a new charter for the bank early before the election. See, it wasn't supposed to expire until after the election, but these guys thought they could get Jackson to veto this bill to recharter the bank. It would make him unpopular. So Jackson hated Nicholas Biddle. He was like the rich, pompous guy that Jackson so despised. Uh, yeah, so Jackson hated Biddle, and sure as the sun will rise, Jackson vetoed the bank when Nicholas Biddle uh, reapplied for the charter early. However, much to the surprise of the Whigs, the American people supported Jackson in his veto and essentially the closing of the national bank. Jackson handily won his re-election in 32. Jackson killed the bank for good after this veto when he ordered all government funds moved from the national bank into state banks. The bank was gone for good when its charter expired in 1836, so Jackson really did not like that bank. But it turns out killing the bank wasn't a great idea, because it brings us what's called the Panic of 1837. But first, let's talk about the election of 1836. So the very next election, we're there already. The Whigs ran 3 candidates versus the Democrats' 1 candidate, Martin Van Buren. So the hope was the amount of candidates would prevent Van Buren from reaching majority. So that's like the 51% you need to win. Pushing the election, this in the event that there was no one that won 51%, the election would go to the House of Representatives, as it has in the past, and the Whigs controlled that. So basically, if they could limit Van Buren from getting that 51% by running all these other regional candidates, these regional Whigs, it would go to the House, and the Whigs would win. They'd pick a Whig. Well, this didn't work. Van Buren won anyways. He basically rode on the coattails of Jackson's popularity into a smooth victory. Unfortunately, Jackson's closing the bank would give Van Buren a lot of trouble. You see, after the national bank expired, small state banks started issuing too much money again. The banknotes essentially became devalued, and the government wouldn't accept them. Mostly in the form of people wanting to buy land. See, the government's always selling land. That's how people move west. So people start trying to buy land with these notes issued by these state banks, and they're doing it all willy-nilly. So the government says, you know what, I don't know if these are worth anything. This, when the government stops accepting your money, it causes people to worry, and it caused the Panic of 1837, which in turn causes severe economic depression. Van Buren actually didn't do much to prevent this, although it wasn't really his fault. He didn't close the bank. Jackson closed the bank. But Van Buren believed in the free hand of economics, that the problem would be self-corrected by the market. Not so much, but Van Buren did create, well, he didn't do it himself. He helped with the creation and supported the creation of a federal treasury, which is where the money for the federal government would now be stored instead of these state banks. Kind of a good move for the economy, but as you'll see in our next paragraph here, it didn't fix the Depression. Let's see. Oh, before we move on, I want to note that Van Buren did help create this national treasury. However, the issue, for complex and complicated reasons, split the Democratic Party. So now you have the Democratic Party in charge. There's a depression that's not going away, and they're divided over the creation of this national treasury. Keep in mind that Democrats in general didn't like the bank, so they really wouldn't like a federal treasury. But some did, some didn't. The party is split. That brings us to Whigs in power. So the country is still in a depression in 1840. The Whig Party goes ahead and runs William Henry Harrison and John Tyler as his VP. Harrison was a war hero like Jackson, who had gained fame by taking out Tecumseh at Tippecanoe. We remember the battle at Tippecanoe. Whigs portrayed him as a frontiersman like Andrew Jackson, when he was really just a wealthy Ohioan. The Whigs portrayed Van Buren as a rich snob, essentially. Their slogan was Tippecanoe and Tyler too. It worked because Harrison and Tyler won by a large margin. So it's a bitter cold January day when Harrison delivered his inauguration speech. He insisted on not wearing a hat or coat. He did not bundle up, and he ended up getting pneumonia and died 32 years after becoming president, making John Tyler his VP president. John Tyler was only 50 at the time and the youngest president up to that point. Now, Whig Party leaders had these plans to basically work Harrison like a puppet. It was these plans of guys like Henry Clay and Daniel Webster. The problem is, Harrison died, and Tyler was no puppet. In fact, Tyler hadn't even been a Whig very long. He had been a Democrat. And even though he was, the VP candidate for the Whig Party, there were a lot of Whig ideas he didn't support. He frequently vetoed Whig-sponsored bills, infuriating the party, who had him, they kicked him out of the Whig Party. They hated him so much. What really put them over the edge was that he vetoed a new charter for a national bank twice. So they kicked him out of the party. His biggest success as president involved actually a treaty with Britain, the Webster-Ashburton Treaty, settling a border dispute between the U.S. and Canada. You can see it here on this nice little map. So the Whigs never did too well nationally, at least not for long. They ran Henry Clay in 1844, who lost to Democrat James K. Polk. The problem was Whigs had increasingly sectional goals, so they had trouble coming to an agreement on anything. They would get another man in office in the White House, Zachary Taylor, in 1848, but the issue of slavery would essentially destroy the Whig Party, driving them apart. Many Northern Whigs would end up forming a party that exists to this day, the Republicans. So that's your lesson for the day. Go ahead, knock out the assignment. Simple question. How did John Tyler become president, and why was he kicked out of the Whig Party? That's it. Simple submission type. This was the last section in the chapter. So study day, and then test day, and then we're moving on. I believe the next chapter is called something of the likeness of Westward Expansion. Oh, Manifest Destiny. So that means we're talking about Oregon Territory, statehood for Florida, war with Mexico, and California and Utah. So we're going to be getting to the gold rush and stuff like that. All right, some Wild West kind of stuff, and mountain men. All right, that's it for today. Let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, have a wonderful day.